All right, in a few moments, we are going to go to a video of me showing you the Venn diagram for grief work that I do. It's still something I'm playing around with and will come out with other versions of, and I might target clinicians in some follow-up videos here, but I wanted to start off by just giving a quick intro. So we use Venn diagrams in couples work as well, and that's what I'm modeling this after. And so with that model, it is looking at the co-creation experience that we have in relationships, the we or the us, the other, them or you, and then me. And we look at the differences in values, the differences in interests, goals, personalities, temperaments, everything that we kind of bring into relationships, and look at where the sticking points are and where the impasses might be. And then we try to understand what we own in this with our own individual work and how we need to co-create things together to feel like we have better, secure attachments and relationships. So with grief, it is really important to get into the relational process because we lose something that's really important to us, whether it's a person, place, or thing. And where we often struggle the most with these losses is feeling like we've lost a big part of ourselves. And so this is not to minimize this loss at all, but it's to better name what actually is inherent in what we keep in these relationships and the processing that goes around that. And I find the Venn diagram is actually really simple and a good thing to use to look at that. So without further ado, we're gonna cut to video here, and then you will hear me on the back end kind of debriefing. All right, today I'm going to be talking about the grief Venn diagram that I've been working with a little bit in the past month or so. So I thought of this idea in relation to something we use in couples work a lot, using a Venn diagram, where we draw out a Venn diagram using the concept of you, me, and we. I'm going to give you a caveat right off the bat here. I'm a little stuffed up because we have kids and it's cold season, and I don't draw particularly well or write particularly well, so we will suffer through that together. So anyway, we have a Venn diagram here, and I'm going to modify this as I go for grief work. We are going to draw out you, me, and we, and I'm going to actually modify that language a little bit too, because there's a lot of different types of losses in grief. And so I'm not going to actually just keep this with people or animals or anything like that. I'm going to broaden it out a little bit. So over in the red circle is going to be me. That is going to stay the same, and we are going to cope with that terrible M. In the blue circle is going to be you, and I'm also going to modify that with maybe it, because we can lose places, we can lose things that are important to us, we can lose things outside of, again, living entities that are part of grief. And so I just want to be able to capture all of that. And then in the middle, we are going to have we, us, and I think that should be able to capture what we want it to. Okay, so for couples work, we sometimes model this out, and we can use it a couple different ways. Sometimes we ask about important values that both parties have when we're working with people. Sometimes we'll ask about differences in personalities, temperaments, and what we notice about differences as well as similarities that are both individual to both parties. I hope you appreciate the hand gestures here. And then when we think about the middle piece, it can become a little interesting because there's sometimes overlap in what we both share, but there's also ways that we influence each other throughout the relationship, or that something influences us. So if we're talking about the loss of, let's say, living in an important location that you are grieving, then we might understand that as ways that that location influenced us, and maybe the ways that we felt like we influenced that community or location. Those extra tip taps you hear right there are my corgi, who is also going to be joining by audio here, hopefully not too loud. Okay. I'm going to take a quick pause because I'm going to draw in some items here to give you a better understanding of what this can look like with couples work and relationships, and then I'm going to, again, modify it for grief. Okay. As you can see here, I've written in quite a lot, so I'm going to go over this briefly. So I'm actually doing a real loss. My dog Marley from when I was little. So he's a Siberian Husky, and I grew up with him, and he lived until he was 16. And let's say I was in middle school when he died, so I want to say I was maybe like 11 or 12. I'd grown up with him my whole life. So meaningful relationship, and I thought it'd be easy to kind of show it this way. So for you, that's Marley. And so I wrote down his qualities, just kind of giving an example of what I'm looking at here. So he is a really solitary creature. I grew up next to the woods, and he would often just be hanging out around there and surveying his property. He just loved being outside. He was mostly an outside dog. Very protective, very accepting of me. I was kind of a wild kid at times. He's very adventurous. He would be really funny. I don't know, a lot of dogs get, I guess what you could call fraps, zips, or whatever you want to call it, and he would just kind of get these energy bursts that I always thought were really funny, and then oftentimes the way we played he was really funny. He was really stoic. He looked pretty much like a wolf, and he when he would survey his land and kind of pay attention to all the rustles and the stuff in the woods, you could just tell he was focused and unmoved a lot of times, and calm and peaceful was maybe a part of that. The last thing I wrote down is he was definitely stubborn. You could not get the guy in at all. If you did not want to come in, feeding him was kind of on his terms a lot of times. Yeah, he definitely had his own individual kind of bend to him, and later on in life he would also just kind of walk off property and do whatever he wanted, and we would sometimes get calls. On my end, I would say this is still true for me probably a lot right now too, but definitely back then, introverted. I was an only child, spent a lot of time by myself, and yeah, times were lonely sometimes, but most of the time I really enjoyed it. Pretty anxious kid, social anxiety, also OCD later on. I would say I was caring, quiet, definitely hilarious and modest about that. Imaginative and creative. I could definitely get lost in my own worlds pretty easily, either with toys or with going outside and just kind of messing around, making little tree forts, playing in the snow, what have you. And so the big part for the we part here is that we would often adventure together a lot outdoors in the woods. He had a special little hill on our property that he really enjoyed. He would sleep there a lot and kind of made his own den, and I eventually made my own kind of space up there with him. And even after he died, I made a tree house. We shared a really special place in Maine together every summer, and so that was we had a lot of shared memories there. Winter is definitely when he was in the zone, and I also ended up loving Winter because of that, I think. And we're part of a pack together. I definitely felt that growing up, that we just had a lot of this innate nonverbal connection that still remains, and we both share the sense of patience with each other and all our idiosyncrasies and eccentricity, or maybe eccentricities is the better word here. So yeah, as you can see, I kind of mixed things up with a combination of characteristics, memories, and anything that we can kind of name as being significant parts of this relationship. Again, values might be something that you note down, but memories can be actually a really good way to tap into this, because it can kind of, whatever memories rise to the top, it can kind of tell you about what is important about these relationships and how you might capture that. Okay, so I'm going to pause one more time here so that I can do this grief part and this next step.